Those of you that follow the channel know that I've got two outfits, one Indian Roadmaster and one Harley Sportster Iron 883. What I'd really like to know is, out of the two of them, which ones you prefer? Which would be your favourite bike, the one you would take home? So today we're going to talk about the bikes, we're going to talk about why I went custom, we're going to talk about how they handle, we'll also talk about the comfort levels of each of them, the applications for each of the bikes, why I've got two basically, and the overall aesthetics. And once we get to the end of that, I want you to tell me which is your favourite. Which one of these bikes would you take home? So the bikes. The Indian Roadmaster is a 2018 model, completely stock bike-wise. It's been a very reliable bike. It's got about 80,000 kilometres on it now. I've never had to touch it. Anyone that knows the Indian Roadmaster knows that they are an absolute torque monster. They pull easily, they hold road speeds easily, and they've got every luxury you can possibly put on a bike. The Indian Roadmaster is probably, by itself, the best touring motorcycle on the road. Others may disagree, and that's fine, but I think you have to ride the competition to realise what it's like. And up until 2018 I had ridden Harleys and I had ridden the Indian Roadmaster, and in 2018 the Roadmaster was well ahead of Harley Davidson. That's why I bought it. Having said that, I haven't ridden bikes after 2018, and I think Indian's been good for Harley in that it's made them catch up. And I think their latest bikes are a lot better. So the Harley is a 2018 Iron 883 Sportster. It's another very, very reliable bike. It's a smaller bike, it's a lighter bike, but it certainly has enough torque and enough power to pull a sidecar. The advantage of the Harley for me is that I can make it a smaller outfit that I can fit on a trailer that we can tow when we're travelling in the motorhome. When we get there, we get out the little Sporty and we do all our travelling on the Sporty. So they're both different bikes. They're both different concepts in bikes. The Sportster is a Sportster. The Roadmaster is like a Grand Tourer, if you had to compare it in car terms. So they are different, but having said that, they've both got their place and they're both very capable sidecar haulers. The actual sidecars are both custom built, hand fabricated. The one on the Roadmaster is a hand fabricated all steel body built out of panels cut from a car by a very, very clever old paddle beater who used to build dusting sidecars for the Dustings company back in the 50s. If you have a look at my sidecar, the Dustings, it does look like a Dusting, but it's not a Dusting. It's certainly not a fiberglass style Dusting, which is repeated time and time again. It has a couple of features that others don't have. Namely, it's got a bit of a dash at the front. It's a little bit narrower than a genuine Dustings. And the inside line where it lines up on the bike is straighter than on a Dustings. And that's because, in the opinion of the bloke that built it, it makes them look more attractive from behind. And it certainly does. It's a very subtle change, but it is a good thing. It's sitting on a DJP chassis. Now, DJP were sidecar manufacturers in Australia for quite some time. They used to have a torsion bar suspension system on them, but the torsion bar suspension was known to fail. Basically, your wheel would run off without warning, just when you didn't want it to. So the Dusting sidecar is a very nice looking thing. We altered the chassis on the Dusting so that it's a conventional shock absorber system. That meant that we could get a custom-made shock absorber to carry the weight, and it works very well. It was an expensive shock absorber, it cost about $800. But by geez, it's chalk and cheese between that one and the off-the-shelf ones that I had on it prior to. So that's the Indian Roadmaster and the Dusting's outfit. Then you've got the little Iron 883 Sportster with the Steve style sidecar. Now the Steve style sidecar really is pretty special. Again, it's a handmade aluminium sidecar. It is a correct copy of a sidecar that was attached to a 1950s Vincent. Right down to the fact that there's no welds in that sidecar at all. It's all hand formed, and all the seams are rolled and crimped, and they're hammered shut. So that's how the original Steves that appeared on the Vincents were built. It's a much lighter body than a lot of them, or a lot of the Steves. Some are steels, you know, and later on you could get aluminium, you could get fiberglass versions of them. But that body is correct. Now the chassis on the Steve style sidecar is a Watsonian sidecar, 1958 Watsonian Monza sidecar chassis. It's a complete loop chassis as opposed to the original Steve, which is only half loop. There's advantages to that in that it's a much more rigid chassis than the original Steve. So that makes the bike a lot easier to connect up to the sidecar chassis and vice versa. It gives you a lot more options. It means you can carry weight on the actual chassis of the sidecar without putting it onto the body of the sidecar. So it was a good thing. Again, we've updated the suspension on that and put a better shock absorber on it. Why did I build a custom sidecars? Why didn't I just go out and buy them? I mean, I could have just gone out straight off the shelf and bought sidecars from manufacturers like Ural or Changjiang. Changjiangs weren't available when I built them. The new Changjiangs weren't available. The Ural was. The difference is, I think, above all else, I know that the Indian Roadmaster and the Harley Davidson Sportster are extremely reliable engines, and they're both capable of holding 100-110 kilometres per hour on the road all day long, no problems at all. They're very robust engines. There's a lot of quality in those bikes. Now I've seen older Urals and they're quite good, but every owner of Ural I've spoken to says they need constant maintenance to keep them up. And even vloggers on YouTube now who have owned Urals for some time will tell you the same thing. If you're not constantly looking after them in the service intervals, they'll give you grief at some stage. Now, I don't need the grief. I know I've had bikes all my life. I've had bikes that were reliable, and I've had bikes that were unreliable. If you've been into bikes long enough, you'll pick the reliable one any day of the week. So that's why I chose the bikes that I chose. The other thing about the sidecars and why I went custom is I think you can, if you build something that's a one-off, there's a lot of appeal to that, and people do appreciate it when they see it. I certainly do. When I see something that's been well put together, be it a car or a bike or whatever, you can see it from a mile off and it's pleasing. There's a lot of joy in owning something that is just your personal choice, and you get that out of customising. But the other thing about customising is, by customising on the Indian, it's a big heavy bike, so I needed a substantial frame and I needed suspension that could match the weight of the big Indian, leaning on it and pushing it around. Was that available via a Ural or a Changjiang? I don't know. The Changjiangs, to be fair, the new Changjiangs have got a modern motor in them, and it's basically a Kawasaki motor. The motor's been in a lot of bikes. It's a very reliable motor, and they will hold a normal road speed. So, you know, I haven't ridden one, but if I was to be tempted by a non-custom bike, I'd be leaning towards the Changjiang, as silly as that sounds, to say that we're going from a bike with all the history of the Ural to a new version of a Changjiang with a motor that hasn't been tried in sidecar applications. Well, it's been tried in every other application and it's a good motor, there's no doubt about it. They look to have the quality in them, the Changjiangs, and I think Chinese bikes have come a long way in that time. I'd be tempted to look at them. They're an affordable option. The other option, of course, with sidecars is the Royal Enfields, and since they brought out that 650 twin engine, you put a sidecar on them and they're quite a nice unit. The only thing I don't like about them is they use the Inda sidecar body. I've owned Royal Enfields and mechanically they were very good, although it was the 535 Continental GT, not the later models. But little things like spokes letting go was a problem on them. You had to treat them accordingly, but if you did, they were quite reliable and a very enjoyable bike, and they looked great. But the Inda sidecar is not made to the standard of the Royal Enfield bikes. And if you're going to be travelling long distances in a sidecar, I'd say you'd want to do a fair bit of work to those outfits, the actual sidecar component, to make them stout enough and strong enough to do the job. So how do they handle? Well, the Indian Roadmaster, no-brainer, Rolls-Royce of motorcycles. If there's one bike that's earned that moniker after the Brough Superior, it's the Indian Roadmaster. It is beautiful in every way. You walk in, off the floor, when you buy the Indian Roadmaster, there is nothing you need to add to it. There is nothing no aftermarket accessories that you have to have. They're powerful, they're fast, they're quiet, they do everything right. They've got all got fully adjustable air suspension. Everything about them is right coming out of the shop, and that results in a very, very good handling bike. It's a very relaxing bike to ride. You can do the miles on it. With the sidecar on, again, all that luxury and all that usability of the Roadmaster makes it a very enjoyable sidecar hauler. You can definitely do a lot of miles on the Roadmaster with the sidecar on. Now the Harley, how's it handled? Well, I'll tell you, they're different. And having owned both Harleys and Indians for long times, people often say which is the best. Well, in my opinion, you shouldn't compare them, because comparing a Harley to an Indian is like comparing a well-spec'd Ford or Holden motor car or a Chev, comparing that to a luxury car. Now, you can argue that there's differences between the two, or they're closer than that. Not in my experience. Not in my experience. You can get the top spec Ford LTD, drive it down the road, and it's beautiful. Get out of that car and get into a similar spec Jaguar or Mercedes, and there is something noticeably better about the Mercedes or the Jag. And it's just that. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what is the difference, but there is a difference. So having said that, we don't compare Harleys and Indians. What I will say about the little Sportster, what's it like to ride? What's it handle like? Well, riding the Sportster is like getting a punch in the face from a mate every now and then. You know, it's an experience. It's in your face all the time. But it's a very enjoyable thing. It's a different riding experience to the Indian Roadmaster. The engine in the Sportster produces the power at a very low rev, and it revs pretty high, which means that it can pull pretty well. And in fact, I believe the 883 is a better sidecar hauler than the 1200 because of the difference in the gearing from the factory. So how does the Sportster handle? Well, you get the Sportster into twisties, and they are pretty good handling bikes. They lay down, they get round corners, they've got that beautiful, stick them in third gear, and you can pull anywhere from 30 k's to 120 with no problems at all, and they pull willingly. They do handle okay. And when you add the sidecar, that quick handling makes them a lot of fun in the twisties. Stick it in third, leave it in third, and just keep pulling through those corners. It's a lot of fun. So handling, they handle differently. Do I have a preference? I enjoy both. On a long ride, I'd take the Indian, but I would equally, if I had to get there, I would do the same journey on the Sportster. The seating position on the Sportster is a lot better than you think. Because you're leaning slightly forward, you're carrying your weight on the balls of your hip, if you like, forward. And that riding position is quite comfortable, and it's good for long periods. We're not doing much over 100 k's an hour, so we don't have a huge problem with wind hitting us, but the fact that we're leaning slightly into the bars, and that makes it all quite enjoyable. The wind actually holds you up. So I would say handling and for ease of use, the Sportster's not too bad. The practicality of each of the tubs. So what can you do with the tubs? On the Roadmaster, the dustings is a little bit narrower and the seat's more curved around and more tailored, so you actually sink into it, a bit like a bucket seat. It's comfortable, it's got plenty of leg room. In fact, when you're travelling, there's enough room to store gear up the front of the sidecar and still have full leg room. It's also got a little boot on the back, so you can cart gear in the back as well. It's got a windscreen, and that on a long journey is good for a passenger, putting a windscreen on it. The Sporty, with the little Steve style sidecar, no windscreen, so you're in the wind a bit more. It's actually a bigger tub to sit in. It's wider, and the seat in it, you've got a more natural seating position because it sits higher off the floor. So comfort-wise, probably the Steve is the more comfortable seating out of the two sidecars. It doesn't have a screen. I've been going to put one on. I've actually got one in the shed, but it just doesn't look right. And if I get one that's not right, it'll only deflect it till it hits you in the head, and then you've got buffeting all the way. So it's a toss-up between what looks right and what works. It's certainly a big screen on the Steve. I don't think would do it any justice at all. The Steve also, plenty of leg room in the front for any size person, up to 6 foot, like I can get in and out of it. So it's got that. The dusting I can also get in and out, but it's tight. The Steve, again, I can cart stuff up the front, and I can also cart stuff in the boot, which you access by tilting the seat forward. So they're both pretty good. Applications, well, why have I got two? If the Roadmaster's in a bit, why have I got two? We carry the bikes with us when we go away, or one of those bikes with us when we go away, and we tow it behind the motorhome. So I couldn't come up with a reasonable trailer to take the Indian Roadmaster. The winches to get it on and off, more difficult. It's a heavier bike, whereas the little Harley, it's narrower. It fits into the trailer quite well. It travels quite happily on the back, so that was important. So that's the main reason why I built the Harley Sportster. When I was thinking of building a narrower sidecar to take with us when we travel, I could have picked any bike I wanted. But again, it came down to reliability. I wanted something that would sit on 100. I wanted something that I found pleasing to look at. And for me, it was nice to have another Harley in the shed. So I got the Sporty going. The other thing too is, when I was younger, much younger, and I got my first job, the first thing I did was go out and buy my first brand new bike. And that first brand new bike was a Harley Davidson 883, the first of the Evo Sporties. And out of all the bikes I've had since, the one I wished I'd kept was the old Harley 883. But basically, they're the same bikes. It's incredible how similar my memory of that 1986 883 Sportster to the current one is. It's just amazing. They make the same noises, they do the same things. It's just incredible. And that nostalgia value makes the Sportster very attractive to me. With custom vehicles, looks are very important, and at the end of the day, you can do whatever you like, but it seems to be the one that people pick will be the one that they find most visually appealing. It's their personal choice, and that's fine. That's the way it is. But the difference between these two bikes, aesthetically, although they conform to some of the same principles, design-wise, they are different to look at, and they have a different impact on people. Let me know in the comments which ones you would prefer and why. I'm very keen to know why you find one more appealing than the other. Is it just that one's a Harley and one's an Indian? I don't know. You let me know, because I can't split it.